Now that we have built our base, we could trap the other team in the smaller tower and win the game that we've been waiting for. Just one last shot.
How could we figure out these angles for the perfect shot?
Similar to the law of sines and Pythagorean theorem, this law can be used to solve for unknown sides and angles in all triangles, not just right angles. First, let's draw an example triangle and label each side with a lowercase letter and angle with a capital letter. This is triangle ABC. Side A is opposite angle A, side B is opposite angle B, and side C is opposite angle C. To solve for the measures of each side or angle, we can use three equations. Let's take a look at the first equation. Because this is an extension of the Pythagorean theorem, we should know how we get this equation. Consider a coordinate plane and place triangle ABC on it with angle A at the origin and with side C along the positive x-axis. To review, point A is located at 0, 0, point B is located at x0, and point C is located at xy. If we look at the coordinate plane, we can see that point C is at distance B from the origin. In order to obtain the value of A, we can use the distance formula. Using the distance formula, set side A equal to the distance from point C to point B. Now we have our first equation, which can be rearranged to solve for the other angles and sides. Now that we have our equations, they can be used to solve a triangle in two situations, SSS and SAS. In SSS, also known as side, 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 we are given all three side measures, which can be plugged into the law of cosines equations to solve for the remaining angles. In SAS, we are given two side measures and the included angle measure, the values of which can be used in the equations the same way.
Example 1 uses side, angle, side to solve the triangle. To find C, we will use C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2 times A times B multiplied by cosine C. Next, we will use this triangle to fill in the variables. We will then simplify. Eventually, we are left with c squared equals 42.63. Next, we have to take the square root of both sides to get c equals 6.53. This will go into here. Now we are going to solve for angle B. To solve for angle B, we're going to use b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2 times a times c multiplied by cosine b. We're going to use this triangle to fill in the variables. Next, we're going to simplify. Now we have to subtract 121 and 42.63 from both sides. This leaves us with negative 138.63 equals negative 143.66 cosine B. Now we're going to divide negative 143.66 from both sides. This leaves us with 0.965 equals cosine B. Now we have to isolate this B. To do this, we take cosine negative 1 of 0.965 equal to B. This gives us B equals 15.2 degrees. Now we have this angle right here, and we need to find angle A. To find angle A, we take 20 plus 15.2 and subtract that from 180. All triangles equal 180. This leaves us with angle A equals 144.8. And now we have solved the whole triangle.
Okay, so now we're going to begin example 2, and you can follow along on your worksheet. Example 2 is a side-side-side problem, and just to review, side-side-side is when you know all three sides of a triangle and you have to find the angles. So just to remember, all angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees, so we're going to use the law of cosines to find the first two angles, and then we're going to subtract the two angles from 180 to find the third. So solve triangle ABC if A equals 9, B equals 7, and C equals 5. So the first thing that you're going to do is label the triangle. So A is 9, it's going to go here. B is 7, there, and C is 5. So I have the law of cosines down at the bottom, and we're going to begin by solving for angle A. So given A equals 9, B equals 7, and C equals 5, we're going to use A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC times the cosine of A. So you're just going to plug in the side values. So 9 squared equals 7 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 7 times 5 times the cosine of a. So now you're going to simplify, and this comes out to be 81 equals 49 plus 25 minus 2 times 35 times the cosine of a. Then you simplify this even more down to 7 equals negative 70 times the cosine of a. Divide by negative 70 on both sides. And then you're going to come up with cosine of a equals negative 0.1. So now you're going to do the inverse of cosine times negative 0.1 equals a. And then you're going to have that angle A equals 95.7 degrees. So now we're going to solve for angle B, given A equals 9, B equals 7, and C equals 5. And we're going to use B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC times the cosine of B. So we're going to do the same thing, just plugging in and solving for angle B. So 7 squared equals 9 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 9 times 5 times the cosine of B. So now you're just going to simplify that down to 49 equals 81 plus 25 minus 2 times 45 times the cosine of B. Simplify this even more down to negative 57 equals negative 90 times the cosine of B. Divide both sides by negative 90. And you're going to get the cosine of B is equal to 0.63. Do the inverse of the cosine. And then you're going to come out with B is equal to 50.9 degrees. Okay, so now that we know the first two angles, we're going to subtract them from 180 to solve for the third. So given that angle A is 95.7 and angle B is 50.9, we're just going to fill the numbers in. And once you simplify, you will get that angle C is equal to 33.4 degrees. So now that you have all three angles, you can fill in your triangle. So A is 95.7 degrees, B is 50.9 degrees, and C is 33.4 degrees.
In this example, we're going to solve triangle ABC, given that A is 66, C is 100, and B is 25 degrees. The first thing we're going to do is solve for side B. And we know that the equation to solve for side B is B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC times cosine B. So the first thing you're going to do is just fill in all the numbers that we have. So you're going to have B squared equals 66 squared plus 100 squared minus 2 times 66 times 100, and then multiply that by cosine 25. Then you're just going to keep simplifying each part until you have the smallest answer that you can. Then to get the actual B number, you're going to take the square root of this number and and that should give you that b equals 48.9. The next thing we're going to do is solve for angle A, which you just use the same equation for it, but this time the variable you're solving is the one that's with the cosine, because that's the angle. So you're going to fill in all your numbers again. 66 squared equals 100 squared plus 48.9 squared minus 2 times 100 times 48.9 times cosine A. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to keep simplifying and try to isolate the cosine A, so then later on you could solve for A. Once you isolate the cosine A, you have cosine A equals negative 0.098. So to get what A actually equals, you take the inverse of cosine of that number, and that'll give you that A equals 95.6 degrees. The last thing that we need to do to completely solve this triangle is find angle C, which is a lot easier than the other one since we have all the other information now. You know that a triangle angles equal 180, so you just subtract the other two angles from 180, and that'll give you that C equals 59.4 degrees. And then you can go back up to the triangle and fill in all the information that you got, and you completed the triangle.
The first thing we want to do is make a model of what we saw in the game. We will set up the model so that a triangle is made between Tower 1 and Tower 2, where angle A equals 86 degrees, side B equals 22, and side C equals 13. With these dimensions, we will be able to solve the rest of the triangle by using side angle side, which will lead to help us find the angle of depression as well. Now the first step is to solve for side A. We know that the equation to find this is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine A. Once we write down this basic equation, we can plug in all of the numbers that we know. This leaves us with a squared equals 22 squared plus 13 squared minus 2 times 22 times 13 multiplied by cosine 86. After simplifying the rest of the equation, we're left with a squared equals 613.10. Once we take the square root of this number, we're finally left with a equals 24.76. Now we're going to solve for angle C. We're going to use the same equation as before, but now we're solving for the variable which is in the cosine, which in this case is C, to find the angle measure. Once again, we're going to fill in all of the numbers that we know, which leaves us with 13 squared equals 24.76 squared plus 22 squared minus 2 times 24.76 times 22 multiplied by cosine C. Then, after this, we're going to isolate the cosine C. After we isolate cosine C, the equation is now cosine C equals 24.76 squared plus 22 squared minus 13 squared over 2 times 24.76 times 22. Now, to find C, we must take the inverse cosine of 24.76 squared plus 22 squared minus 13 squared over 2 times 24.76 times 22, which leaves us with C equals 31.58 degrees. Once we know what angle C is, we can then determine the angle of depression. The angle of depression is also 31.58 degrees because C and the angle of depression are alternate interior angles. This means that these angles are equal to each other, which means finding C means we have also just found the angle of depression.